This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on Fredricka Whitfield. This breaking news, new details about U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's secretive days-long hospitalization. The storm around his hospital stay is growing as more top White House officials are now saying they had no idea Austin was incapacitated. Defense officials tell CNN the Deputy Defense Secretary was not informed about why she began assuming some of Austin's duties last week, the day after Austin was admitted to Walter Reed Medical Center for complications from an elective surgery. Austin's staff didn't reveal the hospitalization to her, White House staff, or even President Biden for another 2 days. And now many Republicans are criticizing the defense secretary, calling his lack of transparency shocking and totally unacceptable.
The handling of this by the Secretary of Defense is totally unacceptable. And I believe the American people have a right to know about his medical condition, about the reasons for it.
It's pretty shocking on this because when you're the Secretary of Defense, you need to make everyone aware that you're actually going to be out of pocket. Apparently the National Security Council didn't know it, the White House didn't know it, Congress didn't know it. We're at a time of a lot of turmoil internationally, and suddenly have the Secretary of Defense, more than just a matter of wasn't there, actually sent over false information saying I'm working from home when he's not actually available at all.
CNN's Arlette Saenz is in Wilmington, Delaware, where the president is spending the weekend. Arlette, are we learning anything more as to why the defense secretary's stay in the hospital was so secretive?
No, Fred, things are still pretty tight-lipped for exactly why the Pentagon waited so long to disclose the fact that Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin had been hospitalized since New Year's Day. Now, the White House has said President Biden maintains confidence in Austin's ability to serve, but so many questions still remain about why they delayed, the Pentagon delayed the disclosure of that hospitalization. As you noted, Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks started assuming some of the duties of the Defense Secretary on Tuesday, one day after Austin had been admitted into Walter Reed Hospital, but she was even unaware that the reason she was doing so was because he was hospitalized. It was not until Thursday afternoon that she learned that that was the case. That is the same day that National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan learned about the hospitalization and then informed the president for the very first time. Now, there has been a wave of criticism, as you heard in the introduction right there. The highest-ranking Republican on the Senate Armed Services Committee, Roger Wicker, said that the fact that they waited so long to disclose this was unacceptable, and he said that it also erodes public confidence in the Biden administration. But Austin has had his defenders, including Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina this morning, who said that the defense secretary should also be afforded the same access to patient privacy laws as other people in the country. Take a listen.
He does have a duty to keep the public informed, and I don't know whether it was him or somebody inside of the military establishment that decided to do it this way, but I'm sure he will do a little better going forward, as he said he would.
Now, President Biden spoke with Lloyd Austin last evening, the White House describing that conversation as a cordial one and saying that he looks forward to the defense secretary being back at the Pentagon. But still, many questions remain about why they waited so long to disclose this hospitalization.
And then, Arlette, how is he doing? What do we know?
Sorry, I had trouble hearing you.
Sure. Okay. Arlette, do we know how the secretary is doing?
So far, they've said that he is recovering well. He said that he was happy to be on the mend. He said that in a statement, and we have yet to hear what the latest is about when he will be released from the hospital. I will say that Austin also released a statement yesterday where he acknowledged the questions about transparency and said in that statement, quote, "I could have done a better job ensuring the public was appropriately informed, and I commit to doing better."
All right, Arlette Saenz, thank you so much from Wilmington, Delaware. Let's talk more about all this. We're joined now by former Deputy National Security Advisor Victoria Coates. Victoria, great to see you as someone who worked as a senior White House administration official. What generally is the protocol for a sitting secretary who might be hospitalized, have an illness, who needs to be informed, under what circumstances, et cetera?
Well, good to be with you, Fred. And I'm actually going to go back a little bit farther in my checkered past to when I was serving as Secretary Rumsfeld's archivist. And I actually saw the papers related to his 2006 hospitalization for rotator cuff surgery. And the way that was handled was everyone was informed, both the purpose of the surgery, the date of the surgery, because as the Secretary of Defense, you were a member of the National Security Council. This is what's convened by the president in the event of an emergency. So that has to be very, very clear to all the other members, because you don't know when that emergency is going to come. And for this routine surgery, everybody was informed. The press was informed the morning of the surgery. The authority was transferred to then DepSec Gordon Eklund. And when Secretary Rumsfeld came out of the anesthesia, he resumed his duties. This shouldn't be complicated. And the fact that they've allowed this to turn into a massive news cycle and scandal, something that should be totally routine, is really quite shocking.
Let me get your response to this, because just moments ago, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who is in the Middle Eastern region, had this to say. Let's listen.
I wasn't aware of his medical issue. In fact, I talked to Lloyd last weekend before this incident, and I know that he's put out a statement addressing it.
All right, so what's your point of view? I mean, the Secretary of State didn't know. You just gave an example of how when Rumsfeld was being hospitalized, everyone knew. I don't know if everyone outside of DOD you're talking, the Secretary of State at that time as well would know, but is it unusual that the Secretary of State wouldn't know about the Defense Secretary's condition?
It's really extraordinary to me. And now from the NSC perspective, for the National Security Council staff perspective, you have to be able to put together crisis management on the fly. And the fact that Secretary Blinken didn't know, Deputy Secretary Hicks didn't even know. That's probably why she didn't come back from Puerto Rico, because what she was being told was he was working from home. And that's what the rest of the Pentagon knew. So it's really confounding, Fred, that they would allow this to happen. And especially in a time of crisis like this, which is the cause of Secretary Blinken's trip to the region, what if we had a successful strike in the Red Sea and had to respond and on a second's notice? That's why you take these big jobs. You assume that responsibility. You take an oath. And this is, as I said, extraordinary.
Right. And the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Kathleen Hicks, we understand, would customarily assume duties if, say, the Secretary was anesthetized or for any reason unable to perform his duties. But now it seems that we're still trying to get a handle of the timeline in which she was informed that she had either assumed those responsibilities or that he was being hospitalized. Customarily, how immediately would a deputy be informed?
I mean, if I were running this, I mean, I would say you would want to inform people well in advance, especially if you know, and when the crisis or whatever it was that took him to the ICU happened, I mean, then immediately you want to over-inform people so that they're prepared. Because if we had to have an NSC meeting last week with Hicks in Puerto Rico and Austin in the ICU, DOD, which would have been lead on whatever the crisis was, would have been represented by the acting Undersecretary of Policy. Mm-hmm. And that's not an ideal situation. So I think over-informing and having people be prepared so that we're not flat-footed in the event of a crisis is the way to go.
And I think everyone is happy and relieved that the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, is okay and is on the right end of hospitalization as far as we know. But again, as you underscore the outstanding questions about his hospitalization, whether the public was adequately informed, as well as White House and other cabinet members. Victoria Coates, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fred.